Les podcasts de la 46e édition de Cinéma du Réel. Discussion autour de Exergue on Documenta 40, un film de Dimitri Atiridis, une discussion animée par Thomas Boutou.
Next to Dimitris, we have Bettina Steinbrügge. You're not quitting your job? Who is,
No, I don't have my last day.
Okay. Who is the director today of the MUDAM, the Musée d'Art Moderne in Luxembourg, and who has held a number of position as a director previously in different institutions in Germany. And Austria, yeah.
And France.
And most of you probably also know Mark Pranson, who is who is until tonight as well. This is not a joke, actually. Head of program of the Berlinale, the film festival in Berlin, and was a filmmaker as well, and who's been the founding editor of this incredible journal called CinemaScope, which
No longer exists also. As of midnight.
I was about to say, which had its last issue, at least in print, let's say, was like a couple of months ago. I mean, just a month ago or something. And actually, in this last issue of CinemaScope, there is an amazing interview that Antoine did with Dimitris about Exergue on Documenta 14, and it's accessible online. So if ever you want to read this interview, if you haven't read it yet, it's really it's a big tip also to understand the process of the film and next to me is Lenio Kaklea, a dancer and choreographer from Greece, based in, again, like Pierre, like in Athens and Paris. Mostly Paris, yeah. Only Paris. But at the time of the Documenta 14, and of the opening year of Documenta 14 in 2017, you were in Athens, and so you were a close observant also of the first part of the Documenta 14, then the exhibition, the part of the exhibition that was in Athens, learning from Athens, and so this is why also we felt it was very important to have you here, even though you were not involved as such.
In Paul's public programs.
Okay. So, yeah. So this is our panel. This is an incredible panel that we have, and we're very thankful. And and I'm thankful. So I want to thank you all of you, for accepting to be part and to take part in this panel and in this conversation that is forthcoming. We have only 2 hours. I mean, less now, less than 2 hours, and the film is 14 hours. It was 9 years in the making, and so obviously we would need far more than 2 hours to unpack, to discuss, to discuss everything that the film is and what's at stake in the film. We would need far more than 2 hours to jump from the film to how it helped us, I think, really understand and in a better way what was exactly the project of Documenta 14 and what it meant and what it means today. And we would need more than these 2 hours also to address what Catherine was saying, is that what the film is bringing also to the fore through its study and the revelation that it brings about the whole process of Documenta 14 is how visionary the proposal of Adam and the proposal of Adam and the work of the curatorial team throughout the years up until the closing of the exhibition in 2017, how visionary it was and how it resonates today in the current situation. I mean, here in France, as you know, there was not even an hour or a second maybe, if I only take the last week, where we haven't heard about deficit, where we haven't heard about the debt, where we haven't heard about like cost cutting and funding. I personally work in an art school in France, as Catherine was saying, and this very week was only about the how to do with less funding, how the Minister of Culture said we should close all these art schools or most of them. So this is the situation where we're in. And so of course the film, as much as it's interesting and in an eye-opening way about what Documenta 14 was really about and what it was and how it worked and how it came into being, it's really also the way it makes us think about the present that is also something that we would love to talk. And last but not least, of course, it being a public event, and after the film that we've all seen, we cannot just also privatize this conversation, and this conversation cannot be also a collective conversation with you all. So we also want to give, and keep time for this, time for questions that would come from the audience. So we have even less than an hour and a half now, and so I'm just going to stop, and I'm going to start just like by throwing a question, very simple question. If we start speaking, thinking about the film, and I would just want to like a question that I want to pass between you all is very simply, and maybe we'll end with Dimitri, but the impressions that the film made on you. And I'm going to hand the microphone first to you, Mark, because somehow, as a programmer, you're the one who just like also, put this film first into a festival, and say, this long film should be in the festival. So, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you and ask you this question: what were the impressions that the film made on you?
Sure, and I'll try to be brief because I could also answer that question in 2 hours. There'll be no more discussion, but. Yeah, I remember very clearly when I first saw the film. It was actually a while ago. It was a couple of years ago because I knew the film was in production because the producer Christos Konstantakopoulos and also Bettina and I were in Athens, and we met Marina Foukidis, who's one of the curators of Documenta, and she told us the film was almost finished. So at that point, I reached out to Christos. He said, "Yeah, we're pretty much almost done. Here's what we got." And I watched it, and it's very. This is, I think, it's a bigger subject which we should discuss later. But, working for a German institution, which was also funded in the 1950s, essentially as a soft power by the Americans, as a soft power to improve the situation post-war in Germany, especially, which was also as well funded, run by Nazis in the 1950s, and then that legacy still exists. And at that certain point was undergoing budgetary issues because of other reasons, but not, the situation was very similar between what was going on in the Berlinale starting a few years ago and what you see in this film with Documenta. And since what's happened in the last month in Berlin, it got even more similar to what happened at the end of Documenta 14. So it was very hard for me to have a distance from the film, though I was very impressed by the film. As I'm sure everyone here understands, the film is eminently watchable. The length of the film really doesn't matter. I could watch another 10 hours of this film. I could watch whatever. I'm sure we all could. There's hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage. But even in that context, the fact that it's also probably one of the best edited films I've seen in the last, I don't know how many years. C'est magnifique. Yeah. No, it really is an incredible project that. And also, I was in Athens, I was in Kassel, I've been to, I think, 3 Documentas. So I know the subject. I was very close to Sharping Away. We know a lot of the artists from the film. Ben Russell is here, for example, in the audience, and some other films. And that year, I was working in Locarno in 2017. And at that festival, we showed, I think, 4 films which premiered in Documenta 14. So the film by Douglas Gordon, by Norman Marie, by Wong Bing, and by Ben Russell. So there was I was very close to the project, in certain ways, not having met Dimitris before, but still it was something I was close to. And at that point, I didn't know, is this something that I'm too close to understand the project? Though I had a sense that it was something which was a monumental work. So then I actually sent it to Antoine, because Antoine also works for Berlin, and who is in the art field, kind of, who works for Semaine de Réal, but who maybe is less close than I am to a lot of what was going on, and he immediately agreed, and they said, no, this is something that, we'll definitely play this for sure, and this is something that everyone should be watching. So from then on, I was kind of more certain about the life of the film, but then it was a matter of figuring out how do you deal with a film like this that's so long, that people will immediately have a prejudice against going to see, even at a film festival, especially with Berlin, where you have 200 and something odd films. Well, less, because we had to cut films because we had to save money, but that's the point. But anyhow, eventually we got to show it this year, so I was happy with that. I think it went pretty well. You could ask Dimitris how it went. But I think generally the discussion, in terms of the discussion that I think is important to have, which we were discussing earlier, is really how the German context of the Documenta project, and also of current cultural politics in Germany, which comes through very strong in this film, and also what comes through very strong in this film as well in our context is why the problems of Documenta 15, which were even worse than the problems of Documenta 14,
I think
happened.
We'll get to this, but first, I just want to start, with the first impression. No, Bettina, please keep the mic and just tell us about, the impression that the film made on you, please.
I was extremely curious watching the film, and I watched it, I think, 2 years ago. And because I studied in Kassel, and even as a school kid, I went to Documenta. And since after Documenta 15 and all the problems that occurred, I wanted to see this in order to understand it a bit better, because this Documenta 14 was an affront in Germany for Germans. Not for all of them, but it was this idea. It was also the time when Germany was really fighting Greece on an economical level, and then there is a Documenta director who says, okay, we're going to do it in Greece for the first time. And it was very interesting how it developed, but I also loved, and watching the Documenta 14 film also makes understand the problems of Documenta today after Documenta 15, because it's also a structural problem. Documenta changed so much from the project that started in 52 that it is pretty clear that structurally there are many things one has to discuss. But I also think it's a fantastic film for curators, because it really speaks about so many things that are at stake today, that are problematic, that are, I think also the art scene has to re-evaluate a bit the situation we are all in.
Thank you, Bettina. Lenio, can I ask you? Same question.
Sure. I thought I was very touched by the film. And maybe what was the most interesting for me was as a Greek and as a person that I was close to the process of the making of Documenta, either because I was rehearsing in Athens at the time, either because I was collaborating with Alexandra Baktzidis, either because my partner was part of the curatorial team. What I discovered in the film was not the Documenta I had gone through. The film arrives to concentrate, to grasp so intelligently the main questions that were really the spine of all of what was Documenta. All of you will speak much better for that, but it was a very interesting way for me to revisit this very critical time in Greece, in Athens. So for me, the object for what I was emotionally connected with during the film was not only Documenta, but was Greece, Athens, the financial crisis, Greek cultural policy, and also all the reasons for which I abandoned Greece when I was 20, and I came back. When Documenta arrived with the project of Documenta 14.
Thanks, Lenio. Pierre, I want to ask you. I mean, we see you in the film. I know we were discussing outside that you just watched it. You spent like 3 days in the Cinéma du Réel watching the film. So I'm very curious to know, how did you live through this experience of viewing the film?
So first of all, this is a film.
This is a great film.
So yeah, this is a film. This is a great film, and so for sure I am an insider of the film, but I can also be a spectator. So first of all, I discover an artist, Dimitris, that was with us all the time, and finally never really behave or express himself that way, even if we saw his film in Documenta, his previous film. So he was with us at a daily basis, extremely involved and in all our peripety, I would say. So that's very interesting to see and to be impressed by your work. So that's my first really strong. I realized that this work is extremely relevant, precise, and this film has a great quality in terms of film and in terms of writing, of making the film. Just to summarize one thing, I think for me was the most interesting is this double gaze through the gaze of Dimitri and the gaze of Adam. So we are constantly driven by this double gaze, and I am all along this very strong experience. I was adjusting myself constantly to this double point of view on this situation. And this is an extremely sophisticated way to narrate a story. So I am very interested by this construction, because even if this story is about something special, I rarely saw something constructed this way, which combine two gaze and alternate, finally comment, because Dimitris, you do a lot of comment, but not verbally, visually, or with the music, or with the angle, or so in a total different way than Adam does himself on the situation, and it's extremely rich for me, and give a very great contribution to this story. So that's the first level, I would say, that this is a film, first of all. Then we can speak about the subject and on what it is about. But the film in itself, it's really a great achievement for me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pierre. Adam, I guess it's your turn. If you don't mind telling us how you felt watching the film, and maybe there's a complementary question, which is maybe how much were you involved also in the conversation with Dimitris during the process of the editing of the film?
I was not involved in the editorial process, so I wanted to see the rushes at a certain point, and I saw like a large portion of the film. Dimitri thinks that I saw the entire film. I'm not sure, maybe I forgot, before it was completed. And then I saw it in Berlin, the full thing in 2 days. During the making of the film, well, I was involved to the degree that I delivered a lot of material to Dimitri through conversations. So from the first conversation in Thessaloniki, when he approached me and formulated something like an idea of making a film, and I said, I agreed, and we continued quite soon thereafter. I think we had hundreds of bigger and smaller conversations, mostly quite informal, and also Dimitri demanded quite a lot of access to situations that were quite tricky to film. So whenever it was possible, both I and my colleagues tried to give this access. So there was a kind of like basic agreement or authorization to witness as much as possible in the process. In some cases, there were people who did not want to be filmed, or you know, there were kind of whatever political meetings where obviously, you know, the politicians wouldn't want to have extra camera, but I think even some of those got filmed a bunch. So in the end, a lot of recorded material was the result of the film, and I always thought that all this material should be in some kind of you know, archive. In the ideal world, it would be an archive of Documenta in Kassel, but we are living in the real world, so I'm not recommending giving all this material to the archive right away. So there is a kind of uncut version that is huge, and then there is this very large version that is edited and that now functions, as Pierre said, as a film kind of about Documenta. And for me, it was mostly a pleasure to participate in the project of Dimitri, meaning that I like to have a kind of external agency that sort of keeps an eye on what I'm doing or what the others are doing. It's a kind of, it's like as if reality was kicking in all the time, because we kind of were exposed in a way, or you know, staged. So it was, you have some very articulate statements of curators, and obviously they are not made to the camera, but they are made in awareness of the presence of the camera. So I think this awareness of the presence of the camera, which developed over time in the team, was helping to articulate things precisely in the process. And therefore, at a certain point, I thought it was all by, you know, it kind of had to end up with Dimitri being included in, you know, in the impressum of the publications of Documenta as a, I think, cinematographer of, right?
If you see in the film, at some point Adam is visiting the art school and he presents his card, the badge, like, in order to enter. When the venue started installing, there was security and you need a pass to enter. So I was not press, so there were two kinds of passes, team members and press. I was not press, so I asked how I get in the venues. And they said, okay, you would give you a team member card. And of course, then I went in the machine, you know, like, because they printed the card, and then I was team member, but I was never asked about that. I mean, you know, it's psychologically I felt honored to be a member of this great team, but I mean, I had no official relation with the people who, you know, with the administration.
Yeah, sure. I just meant that, you know. No, I mean, you were there in many ways, so you became part of this team, and that was a kind of sometimes disconcerting and sometimes you know, great experience to have someone who is basically there and recording and sometimes, you know, commenting a little bit, but like mostly very calm and quiet and just watching by.
Dimitris, I'm not going to ask you the question about what the impression your own film makes on you. Just maybe the fact that now, I said like it was like 9 years in the making, and 5 years editing and finalizing the film, going through the rushes, and maybe this like affective kind of question would be more about how does it feel to have the film now being shared, you know, not just with, I mean, with the team, with an audience, through those two festivals, in Berlin and now in Paris. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thessalonique, sorry.
Yeah, it definitely feels good. I mean, I start to feel like I restructure my brain so I can leave some information. I can forget some things. I can forget some names, number of archives and artworks. You know, it has been a huge archive. All this process. I mean, one aspect of it, as you saw in the title sequence, it's about 2,000 assets. So I had to keep this in my mind for a long time. And I was doing special exercises like for that. Yeah, and I mean, I feel good because also it was, as I told you also yesterday, I mean, my initial plan was to make a 2-hour film, but it became a 14-hour film because there was no other way to say this story, not to simplify it, not to in an effort to try to bring light to everything that happened somehow, and to present the beautiful work of all these people and the artists and the curators and, you know, and all these issues that, side stories that evolve inside the film. And it was not easy. I mean, the editing was not difficult, I must say. It was the most easy part.
Really?
Yes, because it was so rich, the material. I mean, it had these 3 handles, as you say. So, I mean, there was so much talent and intelligence and wisdom and knowledge and charisma in everything that was about the film. So it was really plastic to bring associations and to make it a narration that that flows. The most difficult part is that as soon as we realize that what we're about to produce is a 14-hour observational documentary, then we're starting to, you know, it became like, are you crazy? I mean, what was that? So there was some kind of hesitation with this process until we were convinced that this is what we will aim for. Yeah, I'm happy that it's coming to an end. I'm happy for the reception that it has. I'm happy that there's a starting of a discussion about Documenta 14. People want to revisit what happened because it was also a collective traumatic experience for people who were in the team. I mean, it was really, I mean, I'm not talking about Adam, I'm talking about me, you know, because, you know, I remember the feeling before the opening. You know, everybody was so proud and happy that, you know, it's going to be a great show. And then in the end, everybody was really hurt. And for me, there was this feeling of giving, you know, like a justice to this issue, to make me want to say this story.
The reparative.
Yes. So now that it's happening, I'm really glad.
Thank you, Dimitri. So the story, I mean, and you've said it several times, and especially in the interview with Antoine, is that the story of this film begins quite spontaneously, right? You two meet in a taverna in Thessaloniki, and on your side, and you've said this, that you felt it was like a dramatic moment in the situation of Greece, 2013-14, and you felt immediately that Adam was someone caring for the situation, and this is what prompted you to ask him to do this together. On my side, I have the impression, like now looking at the film, and this is more a question for you, Adam. Now the story I tell myself when I just try to understand how you could this handshake that is the pact that you sign like right on or the next day to do this film, is that somehow. So the story I tell myself is that somehow you knew that this would be a very complicated and long process, and it would take time for people to understand what was at stake with Documenta 14. And it's as if almost you, and this is I think what the film almost says, you anticipated the fact that somehow we would probably miss as an audience what was the real agenda behind the show. And somehow also there's this moment in the film when you're handed over the handbook. So one of the publication of the Documenta comes in, and Queen Latimer gives you the book, and you say, "Oh, I hate these moments when it's finished." And you quote Benjamin and this idea that the work is the death mask of an idea, and then we see that the opening of the exhibition is not your favorite moment as well. So it's as if the film and agreeing to do the film and to be filmed this way was also knowing in advance that it would take time, that it would take time for the Documenta to be understood for what it was. Is it a completely silly question?
If I knew that it's gonna take time. Or if...
yeah, that it was, I mean, it would be like a complicated process and conflictual, and so it needed maybe like, not just for the Documenta archive, but as such for the project itself.
Yeah, I mean, from the very beginning, it was clear that the initial enthusiasm of the selection committee for the idea of Documenta that takes place, in two chapters or acts, one Athens, the other one Kassel, and in this order of appearance. So I was asked to do it, and then the problem started because I really wanted to do it, and somehow the host organization didn't fully get it that I want to do it, although they invited me to do it. So I had to not only we had to build a team, we had to start working on some practicalities, we had to move to Athens because it was necessary to be there, and in order to be able to not only make the exhibition, but to do a lot of things before the exhibition in terms of public, let's say, address. And while trying to do it, we were constantly facing smaller and bigger setbacks on part of the mother and father organization, which basically told us that we can forget that there is a kind of budget activated in the first or second year of our work, because the budget is organized in this way that it has to be spent on the production of the exhibition in 2017. And I said, yeah, but you just asked me to do a project that starts now, 2014, which is going to be slowly built up. And this has implications, so we have to organize this budget differently. And And then it turned out that it's very difficult, but of course the project was supported by the CEO, Annette Kulenkamp, who is a very bright and competent person, and she loves art. So she was trying to support us as much as she could, while not overstepping her, let's say, limitations as the CEO of Documenta, who reports to the supervisory board, who are the politicians and some other individuals from Kassel and Hessia. So these are nitty-gritty details, and there's, one can go really deep into like reasons why things were difficult from the very start, and it was never obvious that this is going to be a success in terms of that the project is going to be realized, like I outlined it, and later how we made it more precise as a concept while we were already working in Athens and in Kassel in parallel in the year 2015 and 16. So at the very end, we managed to realize the project more or less as planned, but of course at a huge cost, and not only financially, but also the kind of human investment in it on all levels. So it was a kind of max involvement on part of practically every person who participated in this, and I think there was a shared understanding that we are doing something exceptional, not in terms of size or, not in terms of that kind of spectacular thing, but in terms of this impossible split between the two cities and between two different economies and economic situations and kind of political context, historical context, which go back to, let's say, the period of Greek junta through the Second World War, back to the kind of moment when Greece becomes this favorite object of kind of various orientalizing maneuvers and procedures that originate mostly in Germany, actually, from the late 18th century through the early 19th century on. So we were addressing like a vast field, and quite specifically, and this is also reflected in the reader of Documenta. That is this major publication with essays that are kind of trying to define the field and context in which we operated. So, and plus, of course, not on top of that, but very essentially, this was not only about Athens and Kassel. This was about indigenous knowledges that were kind of brought into a kind of position in which they could be actually used and manifest themselves through those people from places other than Kassel and Athens. It was a Documenta that had significant, let's say, it was significantly different in terms of organization of work too. For instance, for the context of this film festival or any festival, it is important to say that there were a number of artists working with the medium of film, and not necessarily only in kind of like art context, but kind of firmly embedded in kind of documentary practices too. So Ben Russell and Marina Giotti, who is here too, and many others were also part of Documenta. There were curators who were selected not because of the fact that they are just great curators, but they brought specific competences, like Hila Pelek, who was in charge of the film part of Documenta, and owing to that, we could host in this Documenta in film screenings, artists such as Jonas Mekas, who came to Athens and then came to Kassel, or Yerevan Yannikian and Angela Riccilucci, who now died too, like Mekas. And it was incredible because we had all these people who actually saw that this was something that they must attend, and they have to show their presence. So among the filmmakers, Angela Meritopoulos and many others who were part of it. And I'm talking only, this is just to give an example of the, let's say, kind of distributed film section in the documenta. Yeah, and it was not just shown as, oh, this is just a film. And then another thing is, you know, one part of the program that easily gets forgotten because it's a medium that just, you know, it's a kind of disappearing medium, is television. You know, there was Documenta Television, so we had this unique chance to be able to program, I don't know how many at the moment, but like many evenings in the Greek state television ERT, in which we showed, you know, films that you normally see maybe on Arte sometimes, but not on the main state television that broadcasts to Greece, you know, at the moment of crisis. And we don't know exactly. What I like about it is that we didn't know exactly, you know, it's not a measurable impact that you can have, but we tried so many ways to change the way of addressing the audiences, you know, the public.
But I want to come back to this. I mean, to this, like the core idea somehow of Documenta, and what I think the film shows and foreground is, or reveals also probably for those who were not maybe as much as inside as you were, was this idea of not compromise. I mean, not doing any compromises, and being so consistent with the idea of who should fund Documenta. I think this is really one of the eye-opening, you know, aspect of the film, is as much as you stick to this idea and you fought for this idea from the beginning to not just like fund a Documenta in the way it could be done, going through galleries and having this imbalance between those projects who can be helped and the other ones. And so this is the consistency, I think, that the show of the position that the film reveals. And I wanted to ask you, Bettina, if you had this impression also that it's also a film about being about making little or no compromising, and about a consistency, as in you know, and I'm asking you this as a curator and an institution director.
No, this is, I mean, when I watched the film, I was also interested in parts of the decision-taking, because being in Kassel, there were certain things I didn't understand. After watching the film, I understood pretty well. Yes, I think the rigor that is connected to Documenta 14 makes it so special. I mean, when you look at Documenta 13, for example, that also worked pretty well. It worked with a very different economy, because all the galleries came in and they paid for the production, so it was high production value. And the moment you decide that you are not going to do that, you firstly have a problem, a big budget problem. And you see that in Venice, for example. Venice is also built on galleries, and Kassel was always a bit something different, because you had 5 years time to develop something. It was more rigorous than other events, and it tried to define something. And the rigor behind this one, and I think the Documenta 14 has a huge impact. Looking at curating what institutions or other festivals do after Documenta 14, I mean, the main idea is out there, and a lot of curators reflected that. And I think especially nowadays we need a certain rigor in order to also stay true to what we can do in the art world, but it's really, really difficult.
And we're going to talk about this, but at some point there's also the moment when, I don't know if it's maybe Pierre or Adam saying that it's a shifter, that Documenta is not just an exhibition, but it's a shifter. And when we look at Documenta 15 and the whole Lumbung way of, pulling in money and funding the exhibition and distributing the money of the budget into the different collectives, I think it's like, this is how we realize how Documenta 14 really worked, not just for itself, but as a shifter for the next one. I mean, the future is uncertain, but you remember that part now in the film, Pierre. Did you have this impression also, like when you were working on Documenta with Adam, or maybe Adam, just, I don't know who has the microphone, whoever speaks.
I think one of the things of the film of Dimitris is really to have precisely focus on this question, because that he had so many other possibility to approach this experience. For or longer 3 years. So he has followed something very rigorously and also extremely precisely, because I cannot say anything that is wrong in the way he reports the experience. And it's a very sophisticated, very complex economical experience. But it's also a lot of a lot of incomplete things if you speak about Documenta, because Documenta was much more than that. It was not just economical exercise. Some artists are here and they have had the chance to show their work, and it was also a choice of Dimitri to focus on this curatorial experiment, and to also stay with the curatorial team and stay with the gaze of Adam to identify, and we were completely into this question. So this is to say that Documenta is also something else than this film. It's also another legacy, which is extremely rich with all the works of the artist, and so. But this, what you say, for sure, it's a shift, because and the current situation of Documenta with the last publication of the CEO with a code of conduct, which is something extremely relevant to consider with in perspective with what we did together, is exactly the answer. Because we did the code of conduct. We tried to elaborate the ethic. We tried to work on the ethics, and we fail. We fail because it's a shift, but we fail. We fail. And
I'm not sure.
When you see the current situation of the cultural field is under a neoliberal system that doesn't allow anymore to have public fund only. It's not anymore possible.
Yeah, but if we fail, it's. I mean, if you fail, it's we failed. You know,
yeah,
it's
but
like
it's
collectively.
It's
not Documenta fault.
I mean, it said sometimes in the film, it's a defeat. It's not a success. It's a defeat. We are defeated. I mean, all the cultural system is defeated at the moment. Okay. I'm sorry, but that's my view. But I think we have not succeeded to make the balance. We were accused. We were condemned. We are exiled. I am exiled in Greece. I am not. I have no job in France. I have never had any opportunity to come back to France. Come on. The price is extremely high to have done that. I'm sorry. So the thing is that we can try to analyze what is the situation. But when I see the level of Documenta now, this is a defeat, because there is no hope that Documenta resist to this neoliberal transformation.
True. No, but in the meantime, there was.
I don't know what Adam.
In the meantime, there was also the One Grupa, you know.
One Grupa, exactly. One Grupa does what we initiated, but they also realize something we didn't have the time to achieve, for me, which was the possibility to have a very heterogeneous, not divided exhibition, which deconstruct the use of the space and reconsider the space in a much more fluid way. This, I think, we didn't succeed fully. It was we were in a phase of going to that, but for me we didn't succeed, and this is also in the film. In my conversation with Paul, my point of view is that this has not been achieved, but Juan Grupa achieved it.
Adam, what's your take on this part of the conversation?
You want to continue a bit?
No, it's just to
No, I don't want to interrupt. I just wanted, like, you know, make the conversation collective,
going to Documenta 15 and experiencing Juan Grupa project was a way to experience what we would have had to achieve and we couldn't, because it was a phase. And I think each documenta put
this is what I mean by
this
is what I mean by the shifter. And
You cannot go.
It comes in the
but
film.
for me, Juan Grupa did it, and unfortunately, that's eventually the last and the fully achievement of the defeat. Eventually, I don't know what will be the next, but it sounds not very good.
I just want to add that this is the historical paradox that the final victory comes after many defeats.
Well, the final victory doesn't come after many defeats.
It comes, it's Rosa Luxemburg.
Well, I still... I mean, to go back to the film, and the film tells the story of Documenta 14, and I do think it's, and I agree in most ways, with your analysis of the situation, but it's also empowering. It doesn't, for me, it's not a film that claims a defeat, that analyzes a defeat in this sense. I think that if we find it like gripping, if we find it, revelatory or anything that is positive, it's also because it shows, it shows ways. And for me, when I think that it's like, this idea of the consistency and the doing very little compromises, it's for me, it's still a very important lesson, that doesn't belong to the past. But no. I think we should keep this in mind, because this is the force of the film. No, please. I just want the conversation to be like, passing.
Again, because a lot of what we see in this film and what the audience also gets is some kind of kaleidoscopic eye, because so many people giving knowledge, and I think to this question about the defeat, one who summarized it in a very beautiful way. I mean, I kind of felt it, but I couldn't express it. It's Antoine. He wrote that this is not the story of a shipwreck. It's what was salvaged from demagogy, which is very precise, and thank you, Antoine, for...
Lenio, yeah.
I don't know, I don't remember in which chapter there is this very long discussion of about the negotiations with the EMST that take months and months, and maybe the project is abandoned or whatever. But for me, this chapter, it was the first one I saw, because I didn't start the film from the beginning. I just clicked on an episode to see what it was, and never, I never stopped it. Actually, I stayed there. So this was the first chapter I watched, and I didn't, even though I was close to the process, I didn't know this was really something I had never imagined how complicated it would be for this collaboration to happen. At least this is what the film reveals. And I realized at that moment that Documenta and these international artists, the international curators that have arrived in Athens, they go through the same, they are obliged to go through the same systemic problems, deep problems that Greece suffers from, institutional problems that the country suffers from for years. So I felt in this chapter yet that you really can now feel how we feel when we try to go beyond this sentiment of defeat and this feeling of projects becoming shipwrecks. So I thought it was a very revealing moment in the film, and so therefore in the project.
Mark? do you want to elaborate on this? I mean,
one in specific. Which one in specific do you want to elaborate?
I mean, because you're working for, you've been working for a different, type of institution, as well in Germany, and so and especially, I mean, in the same years as the storied, history of Documenta, right? Of the last editions of Documenta. So, do you have a, perspective on this, and that the film maybe also, helps understand in a better way?
With regards to the sense of defeat and shipwreck, or that kind of thing, I don't know. I mean, like I said, as I was saying earlier, I think before the conversation, I think obviously. There, as somebody mentioned in May's Beer, there was a collective traumatic experience, I think, that happened after this Documenta with everyone, which is something that currently is that we're going through as a collective traumatic experience. And a lot of that is beyond one's control. A lot of that is a product of reactions of other people, in terms of reactions of the media, in terms of reactions of politicians, in terms of the direct context in which you're working in, which also, which is something that I got from watching this also clearly, is really people in real time reacting to having to make decisions in real time, which are, for you, maybe not for everyone else, but for you are very traumatic. I think this when I watched it again last week, it's the two moments where you decide you have to craft statements. The first one when I think it's after the Bataclan, or and when you're in Beirut, and then you say, well, if we don't put a statement out, then people will assume that because we are a government-funded institution, that our view is exactly the same as what the government is. And there's that one, and then at the end, there's obviously the need to react to all the scandalous media reports, which we see basically the last, which were released even before the end of Documenta. So these are things which again, maybe it's just having literally gone through this as well about 3 weeks ago, when watching again, struck me as something which is something that again, maybe not something that normally people outside can understand decision-making wise, is an important and very dramatic thing. The other thing I was going to say that initially, in terms of my first reaction to the film, which I didn't say, was what struck me most is the real high intellectual level of curatorial meetings that you see happening in this film. I mean, the comparison from a filmmaker perspective, I suppose, will be films of Frederick Wiseman or something, where you have lots of scenes of meetings, for example. And as someone who basically has curatorial meetings, or had constantly over the last, 10 years, if somebody filmed our meetings, there's no way that anyone would want to watch that film. Let's just put it that way, because they're really not as seriously minded. And obviously, it's you're condensing long meetings into short periods of time. So maybe you're seeing the most interesting or the most meaningful of those meetings. But I mean, I was just very impressed by how people in this film discussed art and discussed the meaning of what they're doing, which is something I think in the film world maybe we don't do enough. It's more also because a film festival like the Berlinale is very much a meaning of industry and art. It's not really, you can't do a film festival like Berlin without dealing with many elements of the film business, whether it's in terms of sponsorship, in terms of private money, things like that. You just can't do it. It's impossible. That's not the reason the institution exists. But Documenta, as we see in 14 and in 15 more, I suppose, is something that you could, in that situation, you can consciously work without the need to deal with the neoliberal state. But as a film festival, you're sort of captured in that situation, and you can't get out of it, whatever you do. A big film festival it is.
I mean, the history of Documenta is also, going from one to another, and especially since the Documenta 10 to 15, there's a line in this. I think this. I want to come back to this shifter, and this time Adam asked you the question directly. Is that when you saw Documenta 15? did you consider it as a, you know, as a different, you know, as something that was in a way enabled by what Documenta 14 had been and what you had been standing for throughout making Documenta 14?
But only in terms of the decision of the selection committee for Documenta 15 that appointed Ruang Grupa. That, I think, was a kind of response, you know, to both the, you know, the thinking and the process and to a degree how it materialized in Documenta 14, but also a response to the fallout, to the discussion that ensued. So that selection committee, which I think consisted of very bright people and politically minded people, probably had, you know, long discussions, and then they decided to invite Ruang Grupa, which is a grassroots Indonesian collective that occasionally appeared in certain, you know, art exhibitions as a collective, because there was a kind of not fashion, but like there was a period when, you know, there was, you know, the in thing was the collective, like curatorial collectives or artist collectives being part of exhibitions. So Ruang Grupa appeared, you know, as sort of collective artists, cultural producers. They also curated an edition of Sonsbeck in Holland, which is an exhibition that is older than Documenta, that not many people remember, but that it's older, kind of perennial exhibition initiated in Arnhem or Sonsbeck, I think in 1949 already, or like some insanely early moment. And Ruang Grupa curated a, you know, edition of this Sonsbeck before Documenta, so they had some experience, I think, you know, with organizing exhibitions in Europe. All of that was of no interest for all the critics of Ruang Grupa in Germany afterwards. Nobody looked in detail into what they wanted, you know, where they were coming from. They were reduced to stereotype, you know, image of a bunch of people who speak another language, come from another context, do not understand our specific, you know, German responsibility for the Holocaust and so forth, you know, and their discursive attempts to actually, you know, to have a discussion were repelled instantly and annihilated, you know. So they were very quickly put out of action, you know, kind of boxed in and sent back home or wherever they came from, you know. So this rejection was, in my opinion, much more violent than rejection that happened to us, because we could fight back and we could speak publicly also after Documenta. I didn't have an obligation, you know, I was just hired as a curator or like artistic director. The CEO of Documenta was in a more complicated position because she had certain legal responsibilities towards the supervisory board and the organization that she was working for. So it was far tougher for her, and I'm very sorry for that. And I think you know, it took ages for her to get her dignity and credibility back in Germany, you know, because she was really tortured by this kind of media political complex. For Documenta 15, I don't want to make any comparisons with Documenta 14, and I think I would say it's an entirely different exhibition. It had a very precise presentation of let's put it this way, like a kind of archives of resistance in Fridericianum. That was nearly like kind of, I would say it was more like museums sort of show. So structural position of Fridericianum as a sort of repository of some essential elements of thinking about the exhibition was kept, while in our Documenta, Fridericianum was, so to say, outsourced. So we performed a kind of erasure of curatorial authority over the venue that was meant to be the central venue of Documenta, and it kind of, in my opinion, shifted towards, you know, more the square and the Parthenon and other venues and so on. So, but for other aspects of Documenta 15 as an exhibition in Kassel, because we don't know which effects it brought to all those other places and organizations that were associated and that were actually part of Lumbung. What we saw is the manifestation maybe of their involvement reduced to Kassel. So I think it might have had implications far outside of Kassel that we have absolutely no idea about and we're not supposed to know probably. And that was a beautiful thing, because the key thing is how to activate the process in which you no longer know what exactly the implications are. And I think that is something fascinating about Documenta 15,
But this is why it's interesting to think about, D14 and D15 in terms of this decentralization. And I will give you the microphone. And also in terms of the, what I was about to say something. In terms of I've seen this exhibition, and I can't say it's again, I think it was really an empowering exhibition. And if D15 was pinching the market, as you say, at some point in the galleries are being pinched, I do think that D15 went beyond this than just pinching the market, for instance. So this is why I see we can think of one after the other also in the same kind of way.
I would just say very briefly that I don't think Documenta 15 was about pinching anyone, and I think
no. But you said this in the film at some point. No,
maybe ours, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe there's an additional pleasure of not catering to certain business interests as much as you can afford it. And with Documenta 15, I think this issue was just basically removed, and that's kind of great, I think.
Yeah.
But I think that we have a question or a comment.
No, juste pour encore apporter la discussion là. Si on revient au film, effectivement, on ne sait pas les statuts, n'est-ce pas, de ces films. Mais je serais plutôt dans le sens de Pierre, c'est une œuvre d'art, n'est-ce pas? Donc, je crois que la prochaine Documenta présentera ces films comme œuvre d'art, n'est-ce pas? Il faut savoir aussi que nous sachions avant, n'est-ce pas, le travail qui est artistique, n'est-ce pas, d'Adam, considéré un peu l'artiste politique, n'est-ce pas, critique. Donc la manifeste biennale, je confonds un peu. Documenta, il sait qui invite, n'est-ce pas, et il s'attend à cette sorte de polémique. Effectivement, pour aller rapidement et pour revenir un peu aux discussions, le dernier débat, il y a un avant et un après, n'est-ce pas? Parce qu'il y a le Covid, dans lequel on n'a pas encore parlé. Parce que c'était avant le Covid, il avait quand même un contexte très particulier au niveau de la société mondiale. Et on sait ce qui s'est passé après. Et bien sûr, est-ce qu'il se trompe encore la Documenta à inviter un groupe, comme un groupe, ce collectif polynésien, indonésien, pardon, et en sachant qu'effectivement, la Documenta antérieure, n'est-ce pas, ça va produire encore l'histoire du marché de l'art, n'est-ce pas? Que tu ne le penses pas, c'est ça. Les collectionneurs et les galeristes, ils ne s'acceptent pas ces deux derniers Documenta. Et tu viens de le dire aussi pareil. Donc, cet état politique, j'imagine la période du Covid, je ne sais pas, je me demandais à Adam, où est-ce que tu l'as passé? Je ne sais pas, en famille, je ne sais pas. Ton confinement. Parle-nous de ton confinement. Pour après, n'est-ce pas, assister après à regarder la manifeste qui vient après. Et donc, Documenta, manifeste, Documenta. Et des questions vont venir aussi avec Biennale de Venise, n'est-ce pas, puisque s'il est n'est-ce pas, comme ça, visionnaire en quelque sorte, ça serait que, bon, je ne sais pas, il me semble que c'est la première fois un artiste qui est commissaire de la Documenta. C'est lui.
Adam?
Oui, yeah. Adam, c'est le premier artiste commissaire, n'est-ce pas, de Documenta, et ainsi de suite. Après c'était encore des artistes. Donc, je ne sais pas comment s'était passé cette période, n'est-ce pas? je voulais demander.
Vous avez une question que...
Non, simplement, c'est le sentiment, parce qu'il n'y a pas d'échec. Ça me rappelle Thomas Hirschhorn aussi, qui dit tout le temps échec. Il fait une grande œuvre, il dit c'est l'échec.
On peut peut-être en profiter pour faire passer, justement, puisqu'il nous reste une demi-heure de discussion, et donc voilà, allez-y.
Alors moi j'ai une question naïve parce que je ne suis pas commissaire d'expo, je suis juste une petite artiste voilà, qui fait comme elle peut pour vivre, comme elle peut pour faire des petites choses. Donc j'ai une question pour ce monsieur-là, enfin Adam
Shimshik.
Adam. Moi j'ai eu l'impression que vous étiez un peu comme un espèce de sorcier qui lançait les choses, tout le monde avait beaucoup de respect pour vous, parce que vous avez l'air extrêmement intelligent. Je pense que vous êtes surdoué, en fait, au niveau du QI, tout ça. Ça se voit, votre attitude, votre façon de vous mouvoir au monde. Rien qu'en vous regardant, vous avez on dirait une sculpture. Donc vous êtes quelqu'un d'à part, par définition. Ça se voit, ça se sent. Je pense que tout le monde dans votre équipe le vivait. Et à un moment, vous dites... oui, enfin, c'est pas la phrase exacte, mais vous dites... oui, on un peu comme si vous aviez dit, comme un enfant, oui, on les a bien eus, les monstres, on a réussi à les avoir, prendre leur argent et faire ce qu'on voulait vraiment faire. Donc moi, je voulais savoir, est-ce que finalement, ce n'est pas les monstres qui vous ont eu au final, et quelle est votre position actuellement?
Okay, so the part of the question is like, there's a moment in the film where you say, probably in a conversation with the team, that we managed to fool them, and the question is like, but in the end, and this is, who is the they? C'est qui le il? Okay. Okay, alors en fait, ça revient à la question de la défaite. Did you have the impression that it was like a defeat, or did you think that it was did you win something out of it?
No, I just didn't understand this thing with the sculpture of a child, or.
You were playing with the structure of Documenta like a kid.
Like, yeah.
Replacing stuff, and that in the end, if I understand the question, you were in the beginning you were fooling around or fooling with the structure, and in the end, maybe the film shows that you maybe felt like a fool.
Thank you, Linyo. No, maybe I just want to pick up on what Pierre had said about this defeat, because since it's underlying also here. It is a film. Yeah.
It's just a film. It's just a show. It's all art. It's not reality, and so on and so forth. But this film is addressing conditions of production of a sort of multi-million cultural event, and attempts to question different parameters of such procedures, of the making of such events in the process, and making it even didactic, organizing a symposium, for instance, about how to address the economy question from a different viewpoint or variety of viewpoints. So for us, or at least some of us working on this project, it was not only about making an exhibition, but also about discussing this apparatus that exhibition is, which is also the reason why we wanted to include this text about the formation of large exhibition called the Exhibitionary Complex by Tony Bennett in The Reader, which explains how out of the sort of industrial and universal exhibitions of the 19th century, develop slowly this other exhibitions, of which Venice Biennale is the earliest one, where basically those industrial exhibitions get then extended to the field of kind of cultural representation, and all those countries start to kind of represent themselves through their cultural goods. And after the war appears, Documenta out of the need for Germany to put themselves on the kind of cultural and cultural map, to be a kind of accepted, to be to leave the position of the one who can speak after 1945. You know, so it takes 10 years for Germany to make this comeback, and for us it was interesting that just after this first Documenta opened, the then president of Germany, who was Theodor Heuss, who was inaugurating the first Documenta in Kassel, he also made his first international travel as president, and his first travel was to Athens, you know, and it was a significant choice of a place to visit first, and it's since then this became like a running gag, including, you know, Barack Obama, who after he already was not a president, but just like in the very last moment, he took a few snapshots in front of Acropolis. He went there because you go there, you know, it's like a gesture that you confess your dedication to some kind of vague ideals of democracy, you know, Western European democracy. So the kind of, it's not in Sèvres in France, but the kind of, what is it called? The standard of democracy is sort of symbolically deposited in Athens. Well, that's all.
Yes, hello, Dimitri and all the people. Adam, thank you very much for the film. First of all, it was one of the strongest impressions at the festival, along with the film Direct Action. These two films, basically the strongest. And the work you did is, basically, it's very alive and very wise. You know, I just want to say thank you. And the question that is rising, I don't even want to put the question to you, but rather to all of us, because myself, I'm a film curator, and I know this art sphere too. So the procedure of work with all the difficulties and all the ironic moments was so recognizable. So for me, the question of the film is whether this art industry is still something to represent what is going on generally. It's much wider than even this discussion, and even the question of cultural representation and delegation of a spoken word, of a expression. For me, the question is still art, the territory of, in this form, how it goes, the territory where we connect alive things with represented things, and how it goes on. I'm not even taking it to the more narrow level of neoliberalism or whatever upcoming problems, but whether art is still in that force, whether art is still like that kind of avant-garde that is representing things that are going in the world. And also I wanted to make a small comment about your collaboration. Once again, my big respect to Dimitri and his camera and what he was doing, because for me, Adam in this film was the hero of our time. Like, you know, there is usually some time and some hero, a person who understands everything but is kind of in a position with a double inside of himself. Sorry, Adam, that I'm speaking about your, like, you're not you, but your lyrical hero in the film, yeah? This is art, we just talked about it. A person who understands what's going on and who has a big lot of irony and self-irony to put yourself or your lyrical hero in this kind of situation of self-critique, basically, and self-critique on a personal and much, much larger level. So for me, this is a strong impression, and the irony with which, for example, in the first 4 chapters, when the lyrical hero, I wouldn't say you, yes, because I don't know you personally, the lyrical hero visits the artists to see the works, to select the works. Like, come on, we know this situation. And further on, and on the bigger scale levels, so for me the question is, where is this territory that is really connecting us to life. For me, this film is one of the rare exceptional examples that is connecting to what is going on really, but not all the art is made up like this, because of course art is institutional and representation is made inside of the institutions. We see it in this film as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for what you just said.
Thank you.
Someone wants to pick up on this, or we should continue asking, impressions also? Maybe impressions are, important.
I think one of the things that were so interesting about the film is that it revealed how everything is institutional, is that or everything could be, that like Andrea Fraser says, we are the institution in a way. Anyways, she's an artist I like. So I felt that in the film, all small choices, whether what would be the rent, where would the curatorial team be and work, who they would visit, but all small detail became not about only the institution of Documenta, but about the institutional power at stake in Europe at the time, at that specific moment.
In the broader sense, even us sitting here, it's an institution. I mean, it's something we collectively decide to do in a certain way.
Pierre, you want to say something?
Yeah, I think what make it a film and a great scenario, a great fiction in a way, is that what you say, Adam, at the beginning, I will perform the exhibition, I will perform Documenta, we will perform Documenta, not just make it. It is a way to embody fully this experience, and in a very diverse way. And what has catch Dimitris is this process, very deep process through Adam behaving, which is becoming like. We also speak about transitioning in the film. Paul Cole speak about transitioning, but Adam transition into a hero, like you say, but a character that is the narration of that experience. So he is transformed into this narrative machine in that film, and that's what I think it's extremely attractive and extremely also helping the concentration to follow it, because we could be bored in after 7 hours, but we are not, because there is something else than just looking at Adam, even if he's good looking. So there is something else happening, and for myself, being characterized as the bad cop, for instance.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting for myself to discover like a character I had in a way which I assume fully. And as Adam said, you need bad cop and good cop in team, and that's fully true. But this is a very interesting way to realize that, because for sure I never think about that, and I never realized that we were into this kind of construction. But Dimitri constructed a character in this film. I am a second role. There is different other second role, and this is a very constructed narrative, and because also he needed to make that some people come back to drive also the narrative all along these 14 hours, because if you lose the people, changing people constantly, you lose it. So I really feel that myself and the other were also part of this narrative in a very interesting way.
No, absolutely. Bettina?
This is really interesting. I was just asking myself while listening to you, because I mean, also social media reality today, and also the way this society is polarized, or also art events or Berlinale or film events are polarized. It's just like, I was just asking myself, can't we still do just an exhibition? You know, something, we do an exhibition. Do we need all this horror around it? Do we need all the scandals, all this I hate you, I love you, or this is good or this is bad? There's nothing in between at the moment. There's no room for reflection on what we are doing, or what we also want to do with museums, with biennials. I mean, it's either it's dead or it's great. And this was also what I see in Documenta over the past couple of years, because there's also the politicians, and many in Germany, they wanted to be proud and they wanted to be open, and they wanted to embrace global life in a way, and then they realized it's too much. We can't live with it anymore, and we really don't want to, and we're gonna take back control. I think this is the problem at the moment, is this idea of taking back control. And I'm really missing the time where we could fight about exhibitions and maybe just do an exhibition without all this beauty or whatsoever.
Thank you. We have 10 more minutes to go, so maybe like 2 questions. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dimitris. I had really enjoyed the film, and for the people who were involved in this exhibition, I think that it's a kind of exorcism of this experience in some ways. And I wanted to ask you an aspect of the film that haven't been commented until now, which is the place of these moments of dance, performance, music that appear regularly in the film. And while the action of the film is carried out by the people speaking and by speech, there is this moment where the action or the dramaturgy of the film stops and opens up towards another time, another experience of time and space. And I think that in some ways it's also addressed a question that was at the core of Documenta 14. I remember in the 3rd episode of the film, this curatorial meeting, were 2 different propositions. One from Pierre to create an ensemble that would perform during all the duration of the exhibition, and the other one from Paul, Parliament of Bodies, rooted, or revolving around the possibility of speaking. This is what the Parliament is about. And I think that in a way, the film proposed also at some point a vision of a Documenta that was not only revolving around speaking, around economy, around cultural industry, but also a feeling of space, body, time, that was, for me, at the core of the experience of participating into this exhibition.
Thank you.
Is that a question? So,
yeah, it's how much you paid attention to this.
Yeah, in fact, I was just composing or channeling what the discussions were, or what they were referring to in like an artwork, or they were referring to spatial space use. So I had transcribed the discussions, and then somehow you have a discussion and you say, how can I create a poem out of this? It's like, that's how I start the editing with paper edit. So, everything they say has a link that leads you somewhere, and then the filming time gives you the freedom to dance, to associate, So, because, also, you cannot watch a curatorial meeting for more than 10 minutes. I mean, it's going to become, I mean, it's interesting, but, it's not particularly, no, it could become interesting if if it's choreographed in some way. So that was my approach. You can make small segments and then you bring it to the audience more easily, I think. But that's what I felt for me, first of all. I mean, when I was watching it, okay, how can I give rhythm and tempo and... I found it very critical
sometimes. I found the choice of the music very critical, very interesting, because it brings something, sometimes a distance, sometimes a critics, a very subtle on this serious situation, because we needed that, because we were not like fully, like economists. So I like the way you bring back some kind of distance about all that experience. So because the music is extremely diverse, you have a really large spectrum of music, and you also bring Paolo into that, and that's very interesting how you combine also this moment in the film to breathe, because you need to breathe and to really rhythm. I think it's really part of the...
Yeah, no, I agree. Mark was saying that it's masterfully edited, but it's also the sound, the composition of the soundtrack throughout the 14 hours is incredible, in the diversity, but also in the type of moods that it brings at some point into the into
very
the film.
Tangible. It's not also too cerebral. It's quite close and popular.
And it makes it very enjoyable to watch, which is kind of what brings us here. That's crucial, right?
Bonsoir. Ma reconnaissance à la chorégraphe qui a colorié l'espace. J'ai aperçu un élan particulier. Et je voudrais savoir, s'il vous plaît, concernant Adam, réalisateur, et la dame qui est chorégraphe, pardonnez-moi, comment vous avez vécu vos qualités artistiques dans cette expérience? Et qu'est-ce qui a marqué votre partie artistique, comment ça a été marqué, comment Monumental 14 a marqué vos expériences artistiques de tous les trois, pardonnez-moi.
Oui, alors ce que Lénio expliquait justement, c'est qu'elle ne faisait pas partie de chorégraphe,
oui,
curateur et cinéaste. Moi, je pense que c'est surtout ce que...
Oui, mais j'aimerais qu'il me réponde, parce qu'il s'agit justement comment les qualités, quelle place, comment vous avez vécu la qualité artistique de Monumental, c'est-à-dire le lien entre les arts, et qu'est-ce qui a marqué l'art, cette expérience de participer par Monumental 14, comment ça a été organisé, les concepts, etc.
I mean, Dimitri, the question is also like, you didn't belong to the art world so much before the film, and then you got plunged and immersed into it, and I mean, and to the point that you have, you explained to us a lot of things that that explain this work. So, what artistically, like being in connection, close to artists invited to participate in Documenta 14, what did it bring to you? If you have some examples, for instance.
Yeah. No, I had very good teachers, like Adam, Pierre, Paul, Dieter, the artist. I mean, everybody who I talked to was, so smart, intelligent, and brilliant, And they showed me how to see things, in a way. And my mother, of course. But yeah, it was a great experience because it's not very usual to hang on with some of the best experts in the world about art. So it was really rewarding. I mean, I learned a lot of things. I became a different person, actually, I believe. Yeah, it was a great experience.
Because your previous film devoted to this musician, which was completely another context, could you relate the difference of experience, in a kind of, what was the difference between following this character and following Adam? How do you see the...
Okay, my two previous films are about characters also. I mean, I always somehow begin with a character-driven story, and of course every character reveals his world or his journey. So I mean, it's not the same concept. I don't approach the same way, but it's always the character and his world. In our case, I mean, I was attracted. I didn't want to make a film about Documenta. It was not in my interest. I was attracted from Adam's mission, let's say, and I thought it was a very interesting mission, and I said, okay, I would like to follow this journey too. So, I mean, it's human history, human journeys.
Thank you, Dimitri. Thank you all of you. Ah, il y a encore une question. Okay, one last question, and I think we end there.
Thank you. We have seen, I think, the most dark moment in the documentary, in the moment before the opening of the Greek part of the exposition. It was a quite depressive moment. This is a moment to confront the reality in which we are living in the most harsh way. My question is, we are speaking about politicians, and in this context, there seems to be persons who be on the other side, and the documenter is a victim of a certain group of decision makers, which I would not go so far to say that the politicians by themselves not want to do something which goes with the intentions of the documenter, but they have the frames. Even the big institutions like Volkswagen have the same frames, and the frame is called capitalism. And we are all victims of this system. And the real question is if there is any chance to come out of it, to have a Notbremse in German. And I can transform my question in a personal question to Adam. Do we have find energy to go on, and what you are doing?
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, energy, yes, but the context in which I could work, that of course is far more difficult to imagine. I was, for instance, I spent the last year developing a project for a university, not teaching, but let's call it art project, which was supposed to be realized over a period of 6 years, the upcoming 6 years, through several manifestations, which would be spread over time with 3 kind of culminations. This project was, I was commissioned to develop a plan for such, let's say, idea. So I came up with an idea for a little competition that was organized. My idea got accepted. I got a commission to develop a more specific plan. I worked for 1 year developing this plan. There were several meetings with the jury in charge deciding on this project. And as I was going through this process, I realized that there are many more restrictions, limitations, and preconceived ideas about what the outcome of that can be at all than I anticipated, because they invited me, and my idea was just this, to produce a series of manifestations for the new building of a university that is supposed to be completed, in some years to come, like 9 years or so, and not to simply propose artworks for the space of this university that for me is a virtual space because the building is not there. And I don't work this way. I don't work with renderings. I work with physical places. So it ended like that basically my project was dumped in the very last meeting, and they told me that they are very sorry, but they will not realize it. And I said, why? And they said, yeah, because of, we think it's too ambitious, or too, they quoted some technique, they give me like a 5-liner explanation, and very unconvincing. And the real reason why this was rejected is that university today becomes like a kind of technocratic institution that is, also like a big real estate project, and it's driven by the system of points, and you have to produce these minds there. So it's like a factory, basically. While I try to go back to the idea of university as a place where questions should be asked about, condition of now. So what is happening now, and the university should initiate these debates, very much in the spirit, for instance, of, as we were having this discussion earlier, I kept thinking about the book that contains part of the seminars that Michel Foucault delivered at Collège de France in the early 70s. And there is this one part that I think is quite pertinent also for today, and it's the book that is a result of this series of seminars or lectures, in fact. The title is The Society Must Be Defended. The society must be defended. And I like to read this title as a kind of call to speak about institutions of society from the point of view of engaged citizen, and not from the point of view of that we have these institutions that are given and they are not to be changed, and if they are only to be changed by decisions of politicians or business and so forth, So Documenta 14 was an attempt to imagine a possibility, or it was trying to be actualization of a possibility, or embodiment perhaps of a possibility, to think about these institutional setups differently and use them for producing, in this case, exhibition and many things that came along with it, and also producing artworks and working with artists. So I don't have a larger general answer, but I'm just trying to explain how I try to work. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. And I think we can say that the film does, among many other things that the film is doing, great justice to this idea that was at the core of Documenta 14. I want to thank you all, Pierre, Adam, Dimitris, Bettina, Mark, and Lenio, for being here tonight with us. I want to thank you all for staying as well, and participating, and for all the questions.